This is the future. Human error. Evolution. This is the future.
Ils en ont ras-le-bol. Et c'est à Ottawa qu'ils ont choisi de déverser toute leur frustration.
Là, je vous le dis, là, madame, là, je suis à bout. Je suis à bout, mes enfants sont à bout, sont en train de tout détruire.
François Bissonnette travaille comme opérateur de pelle dans le secteur de la construction. Il est parti à 6 heures ce matin de Mirabel.
Je suis père de famille, je suis travailleur, je suis honnête dans la vie, mais là, ça suffit. On réclame la liberté. La passe vaccinale puis les droits de vaccin, là, on n'en veut plus. C'est fini.
Car oui, si les manifestants affluent vers Ottawa, ils en ont aussi contre le gouvernement Legault et ses mesures sanitaires. C'est pas juste contre le gouvernement Trudeau que vous manifestez.
Je manifeste pas contre quelque chose, je manifeste pour quelque chose, c'est différent.
Cette grand-mère qui habite en Outaouais ne veut pas nous donner son nom. Elle entend revenir au centre-ville toute la semaine, s'il le faut.
Pourquoi on est ici pour apprendre nos libertés? Pour arrêter de porter un masque, pour que nos enfants soient libres, pour que mes petits-enfants aillent à l'école sans masque?
Et des enfants, il y en a dans la foule, comme Tyler et son petit frère de 6 ans, Wesley, qui sont venus de Sarnia, en Ontario. Ils ont préparé des dessins pour les camionneurs. Les coups de klaxon sont tellement assourdissants qu'on a du mal à leur parler.
So thank them for what they're doing.
En début d'après-midi, la foule se densifie. On peine à se faufiler entre les milliers de manifestants non masqués. Les policiers d'autres villes ont même été appelés en renfort. Malgré tout, Farès, venu de Montréal dans sa belle voiture, ne s'inquiète pas pour sa sécurité.
Nous, on est civilisés, on veut rester civilisés, puis on veut juste montrer que le nombre, on n'est pas une minorité.
Un peu plus haut, juste à côté du Parlement, bien des protestataires ont trouvé celui qui porte leur voix politiquement.
Et les gens sont venus, malgré le froid, malgré la température, juste pour dire aux gens qui siègent derrière nous, assez, c'est assez, on veut retrouver nos libertés.
À la nuit tombée, une partie des manifestants se disperse, mais le centre-ville d'Ottawa reste toujours complètement immobilisé.
On dort dans le char. Bien, on a du stock dans la voiture aussi pour manger.
Ceux qui restent semblent bien décidés à faire la fête.
Ça n'arrête pas! Ça n'arrêtera pas! On va continuer pendant des semaines, on va continuer pendant des semaines!
Steven, comme tant d'autres, ne sait pas quand il retournera chez lui ni quel impact il aura, mais au moins, croit-il, il aura été entendu.
It's time for the American people to declare independence from every last COVID mandate. We have to tell this band of hypocrites, tyrants, and racists that we're done with having them control our lives, mess with our children, and close our businesses. We're moving on from COVID. Whether they like it or not, we're moving on. We did a great job. Operation Warp Speed has been praised by everybody, but it's now time to move on. Remember, there are far more of us than there are of them. That's true. The Canadian truckers, you've been reading about it, who are resisting bravely these lawless mandates, are doing more to defend American freedom than our own leaders by far. And we want those great Canadian truckers to know that we are with them all the way. They are. They've really shown something. It's time to move on. Time to move on.
Et oui, c'est l'hymne canadien au Canada, les montagnes, etc. Mais que se passe-t-il au Canada en général et chez nos amis québécois en particulier, et aussi aux États-Unis? Mais là, on vient de vous dire des dizaines de milliers de camions, de routiers convergent vers la capitale du Canada. Alors, qu'est-ce qui se passe? On a beaucoup parlé, on en parle toujours, de la crise sanitaire, de Covid-19, du Conseil constitutionnel qui, chez nous, a autorisé, après l'Assemblée nationale et le Sénat, le pass vaccinal. Très bien, mais qu'est-ce qui se passe ailleurs? Et c'est toujours bon de savoir ce qui se passe ailleurs.
Hundreds of truckers who drove their giant raids into the Canadian capital, Ottawa, flying the Canadian flag and waving banners demanding freedom. They chanted slogans against Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Trucks jamming Ottawa streets shut down the core of the national capital as a shoulder-to-shoulder crowd packed Parliament Hill to demand the federal Liberal government to end vaccine mandates and COVID-19 restrictions.
In Canada, another campaign is gaining strength, a campaign to remove Justin Trudeau from office. It started off as a protest against vaccine mandates, but thanks to the Canadian Prime Minister's scornful dismissal of the demands, it has snowballed into a resistance against his leadership and his politics. Truckers and farmers, interestingly, have gridlocked Canada's capital, Ottawa. Most of them say they will not leave until Prime Minister Trudeau steps down. Trudeau says he will not be intimidated, come what may. Here's a report.
The Canadian government remains unrelenting. Currently in isolation due to an alleged COVID infection, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has shoved these protesters to the margins. He has declared them a fringe and their views unacceptable. On Tuesday, he further tried to derogate their motives through a series of scornful posts on Twitter. In one tweet, he claimed that Canadians are shocked and disgusted by the protests. In another, he said his government won't be intimidated by the abuses and vandalism.
I want to be very clear. We are not intimidated by those who hurl insults and abuse at small business workers and steal food from the homeless. We won't give in to those who fly racist flags. We won't cave to those who engage in vandalism or dishonor the memory of our veterans. There is no place in our country for threats, violence, or hatred. So to those responsible for this behavior, it needs to stop.
The Canadian media says that the Prime Minister is exaggerating things, that the protests may have shut down businesses, but they have remained largely peaceful. So Trudeau's statements are only fueling public anger further. The movement is no longer just about COVID restrictions. It also seems to be about Justin Trudeau's style of politics. The protesters say they won't leave Ottawa until the Prime Minister is removed from office. Their calls are finding support from notorious anti-vaxxers from all over the world.
इधर कनाडा में सरकार के एक फैसले के खिलाफ हजारों ट्रक ड्राइवर्स सड़क पर उतर आए हैं और पीएम आवास को घेर लिया। हालात ऐसे बने कि पीएम जस्टिन ट्रूडो को भी घर छोड़कर सुरक्षित जगह पर जाना पड़ा। जस्टिन ट्रूडो के एक बयान ने आग में घी डालने का काम किया और ट्रक वाले और भड़क गए। ट्रूडो के किस बयान पर भड़के ट्रक ड्राइवर्स दिखाते हैं आपको इस रिपोर्ट में।
ये तस्वीरें कनाडा की राजधानी ओटावा की हैं। जहां हजारों की संख्या में ट्रक ड्राइवर और अन्य प्रदर्शनकारी इकट्ठा हुए।
I want to show you now some vision from Canada, where truckies are protesting on the highways and people are turning out in their droves in the cold to support them. Have a look at this stuff, a bit of Canadian pride on show in the middle of winter. The truck drivers are protesting against vaccine mandates imposed on them to do their job and for them to cross back and forth across the US border. The truckies say the controls on them are onerous and over the top. Now, they're getting lots of criticism. As you know, if you oppose mandates, plenty will try and dub you an anti-vaxxer. But as you can see, they're also getting lots of support too. This is a big debate now across the world.
Enormous. I mean, it is just mind-blowing how big this convoy is and how the media has managed to either completely ignore it or misrepresent it, to paint them as some sort of fascist march or to say that the protest is against road safety concerns when we know it's about the overreach of COVID restrictions, the mandates, and Canada has gone absolutely insane with their restrictions. It's things that are just illogical, damaging, and they seem to have no appetite for loosening those restrictions.
Yeah, we're fighting for freedom, my man. We're gonna keep fighting, Trudeau. You have nothing on us, Trudeau. We're gonna win. We're gonna win. We're gonna defeat you, Trudeau. Freedom! 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 Woo!
Oh, I'm not vaccinated. So I left before the 15th of January. The rule in the States wasn't in place yet, but I have other friends that say even though vaccinated now, right now, the US Customs, they're not enforcing that. So they're still going there. The problem is when we come back.
Canadian truckers are protesting all across their country. Why are the mainstream media not reporting it? For one thing, it will be in the Guinness World Book of Records if it is the biggest ever convoy ever, and that in itself is a pretty good news story. They'll be appearing next to the bloke with the beard of bees, and them chubby fellas in checkered trousers on motorbikes. You remember them, and you love them. Here's to the Canadian truckers. Here's to standing up for freedom. Here's to unique ways of protesting and ensuring voices that can't be heard inside the system are heard elsewhere.
Wow, look, we're going to just pick up a story here. There's been a lot of clamour in my inbox in the last few days, and on Twitter, actually. Lots of people getting at me on Twitter about how we really need to cover this story, right?
Yeah.
So American truckers have joined a convoy started by Canadian truckers protesting a vaccine mandate.
Yes, the Freedom Convoy stretches for 45 miles and is about to descend on the province of Ottawa. A mandatory vaccine requirement for Canadian truckers arriving in the US came into force on January 15th, but as many as 1 in 5 are not vaccinated.
I think it's a really interesting one, that, actually, because Justin Trudeau, even I think it was yesterday, tweeted, I've just found out I've been exposed to coronavirus and I've got no symptoms, I've tested negative, but in accordance with Ottawa laws or rules, I am now going to self-isolate for 5 days, this, that and the other. And I think a lot of people now are thinking, well, hang on a minute, if you're taking the very softest approach, he's already stood up publicly and said, well, basically, you won't be able to go on and live your normal lives if you don't get a vaccine. You know, I think people have got a massive problem with that. You know, how many people can he turn himself against? Because for me, one of the main ways that he operates is to go, well, these people are all idiots who disagree with me. Well, there's a lot of them.
Well, I mean, I think some sociologists and PhD researchers really need to examine what's been going on in Canada, Australia and New Zealand, because I can't believe it. They are just, at least in my opinion, going off the deep end. And I even saw a development in one of the provinces in Canada where anyone over 12, so as young as 12, who are not vaccinated cannot go anywhere, and they can only go into pharmacies and grocery stores with an escort.
It's just wild.
It is really over 12, so 12-year-olds. Again, it's segregation, it's bullying, it's stigmatization, it's purity politics. What are they thinking? We're talking about Partygate, but you really have to put things into perspective when you see what's going on in some of these other so-called liberal countries, at least.
Le Premier ministre du Canada dit avoir été testé positif à la COVID-19. Justin Trudeau a fait cette annonce lundi tout en dénonçant les camionneurs qui protestent actuellement contre une mesure de vaccination obligatoire, les ciblant directement. Il s'est déjà isolé chez lui après avoir été exposé au coronavirus. 2 de ses 3 enfants ont également été testés positifs depuis Le Premier ministre de 50 ans a déclaré qu'il fera du télétravail cette semaine. Au cours du week-end, des milliers de camionneurs se sont rassemblés dans la capitale canadienne pour protester contre la vaccination obligatoire imposée par le gouvernement Trudeau. Le Premier ministre les a qualifiés de petites minorités marginales, affirmant que 90% des routiers sont déjà vaccinés.
Ottawa has a new soundtrack. As protesters move to surround the Parliament, a movement spurred on by truckers makes itself heard. As the signs make clear, this is a reaction to COVID restrictions, mainly because Canada and the U.S. now say if a trucker wants to cross the nearly 9,000-kilometer-long border, they have to be vaccinated. There were no reports of violence early Saturday, but there was plenty of profanity-laced signs and strong opinions expressed.
I understand the pandemic is a problem. However, we've got to look around us and see also what we're doing when we're implementing all these mandates. You know, we cannot kill the patient in the name of curing them. We cannot do that, guys. So we're gonna stand free. That's what we're gonna do. Freedom!
The question now, when will this stop? It's a well-funded protest raising more than $8 million on GoFundMe, meaning this may be the sound of the city for a while to come. Patty Culhane, Al Jazeera.
A convoy of truckers arrived in Hamilton this morning to crowds of supporters lining Centennial Parkway and neighboring streets. Organizers have called it the Freedom Convoy.
I'm here to support freedom and the freedom to choose.
Because I believe we have to protect our rights as citizens. This isn't about a vaccine or no vaccine. It's about what we're able to do every day.
The movement started out as a way to protest Canada's new rule that unvaccinated truckers can't cross the border without quarantining. The supporters here today say truckers have been doing essential work this entire pandemic and shouldn't be penalized now for not wanting the vaccine.
These guys are sitting in their trucks bringing us food. They've been doing it the whole time, and they're trying to stop them now, or at least stop a small percentage of them.
This whole thing is about freedom. It's about love for our country. It has nothing to do with anything more than that.
This convoy is all about freedom. It's not only with the truck drivers, it's actually for every single person. You, me, buddy down the road, it doesn't matter. It's all about your free choice.
You can't lock up healthy people and expect them to remain healthy, okay? So the children have not been in school. I personally believe that is wrong. We need to drop the masks, drop the mandates, and start living our lives again.
Now they're taking food from soup kitchens because they're so put upon for being asked to do what they've been asked to do, required to do their entire lives. It's a cult.
Yes, it is.
It's a cult. Yeah. Go along. Go along with everything government wants you to do. That's the advice from MSNBC. Whatever government says, you do. They say jump, you jump.
Freedom Convoy, John, it is growing. Truckers from the U.S. say yes, they are going to be joining in solidarity with their Canadian Brotherhood to protest the vaccine mandates. They are now planning a convoy that will travel from California straight east to Washington, D.C.
And check this out as well. Some truckers, Bianca, found nails on the roadway while they were traveling to Ottawa. Police and Trudeau have, as you heard, they're played at the fact that one Nazi flag was seen flying at the protest. But according to Ottawa police, there has been just one arrest here. They say they're also investigating complaints. They set up a hotline in case anyone wants to tell on anyone. But in other words, Bianca, this is what a mostly peaceful protest looks like. The truckers are being bombarded with nails.
Right.
Not a lot of violence happening, though, as claimed by Justin Trudeau.
Well, at least they're backing off that this is a fringe group. Maybe we have a little win there in that column, John. And you know, Australian truckers have started one of their own freedom convoys. Take a look here. This is their GoFundMe page. They've raised $160,000. But get this, folks, the crowdfunding platform has now frozen those funds. GoFundMe saying it needs details about how that money will be spent. Organizers do say they're happy to provide receipts. It's interesting, John, such scrutiny for these hard-working folks out there, but a lot of other groups like maybe BLM just have millions of dollars and no one's looking to where it's going at all.
The Rainbow Bridge on both the U.S. and Canadian sides were filled with protesters Saturday.
I can't visit my relatives now because of these mandates. I'm not vaccinated.
A cry from those frustrated by the vaccination requirements needed to cross into either country.
It's beyond words that my own country won't allow me to visit my own family. That's BS.
It was back in October that Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau started requiring the vaccine for federal workers. Then last month, both Canada and the U.S. expanded the rule to include truckers. So some Western New Yorkers started their own convoy.
These mandates are unnecessary.
As a way to show solidarity with these truckers in Ottawa protesting the mandate.
So up in Canada, the convoy of truckers converging on Ottawa to keep that nation free is growing larger by the day. They left from Vancouver on the western side of the country on Sunday. They're protesting the federal government's vaccine mandates for cross-border truckers, among other things. That mandate took effect on January 15th, preparatory to a worldwide digital travel pass, internal passports for everybody linked to your health status, but not limited to your health status. If you can't see the future in clear outline right now, you're not paying attention, but the truckers in Canada can. The Canadian Trucking Alliance estimates that roughly 16,000 truckers in Canada are not vaccinated. That convoy also includes truckers who are vaccinated, but who aren't going to stand for tyranny. Here's what the convoy looks like.
This started with vaccine mandates, but for most here, it's about a lot more.
I think this is more of a freedom movement.
Well over 1,000 people lining the Trans-Canada Highway outside of Winnipeg in -30 wind chills, protesting what they call government overreach.
Somebody has to stand up for Canada, and the truckers are doing it.
It all started a couple days ago in Delta, BC. Truckers protesting vaccine mandates at the border. Now, as the convoy logs more kilometers, it's getting more support.
We're just really tired of getting our freedoms trampled on.
It's worth sticking up for what you believe in.
Arriving outside Winnipeg, hundreds of vehicles taking more than an hour to pass.
You came from Calgary. Yeah. What do you think of this?
What do we think?
It's
awesome to take our country back.
As it rambled by, no one was hit. It was peaceful. Salvatore Vetro has followed since BC.
It's a togetherness like I've never felt before.
And it keeps growing.
And thank God it keeps growing.
After a week-long drive across Canada, a convoy of big rigs arrived at the nation's capital to protest vaccine mandates, masks, and lockdowns over the weekend.
I understand the pandemic it has taken many lives, but you know what? There's no reason to lose my freedom as well.
Sounds of honking horns echoed around Ottawa's Parliament Hill, where thousands gathered. You can see the area flooded with protesters, as well as lorry drivers from the Freedom Convoy. Some even compared the restrictions to fascism.
The founding fathers of our country founded the principles under which we live, under Judeo-Christian ethics, and we have abandoned that as a country. We're no longer a Judeo-Christian country. We don't stand for anything in this country anymore.
So over in Canada, this is happening. Thousands of truckers are angry because the government is demanding that they're fully vaccinated against the Rona. Rolling across the nation is their so-called Freedom Convoy, which sounds more American than Canadian for my liking, but there it is. So basically, Canadian truckers coming back from the US now have to be fully vaccinated, otherwise they have to go into quarantine for 14 days. Well, they don't like that, truckers being famously fussy about what they put in their bodies.
One of the demands is an end to vaccine mandates for cross-border truckers.
But there's more. This is 2022, there's always more. It's not immediately obvious who's angry about the vaccines and
who is angry about a whole lot of other things. There are people who hate the Prime Minister and some who want to overthrow the government, and there's lots of hostility towards the media.
More news, bro, telling you the lies, you piece of.
All right, mate, calm down. What could possibly have made them this angry? Well, maybe this guy?
Canada's showing that we are doing things.
Yep, so Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who spent his early fun years having a great time like any super privileged rich white man, often dressed as a brown man, has spent his political years going woke for votes. And during this little crisis, this Liberal champion has accidentally made it be known what he really thinks about these truckers and their supporters. Have a listen.
Small fringe minority of people who are on their way to Ottawa or who are holding unacceptable views.
Unacceptable views, which is an interesting phrasing from Mr. Liberal, isn't it? Could it be that just perhaps some might feel a certain anger over the idea that he appears to be dismissing some small fringe minorities whilst cherry-picking the ones he does want to get behind?
I will never apologize for standing up for an LGBTQ2+.
I would personally take the Voltaire approach on this one. The views of some of the truckers might be a bit silly, but they still have a right to hold them, they still have a right to protest, and they still have a right not to be insulted by their leader. In fact, dismissing them reminds me a little bit of this.
You could put half of Trump supporters into what I call the basket of deplorables.
And you know where that got us. So, politicians, even if you think the views of some people are deplorable or unacceptable, maybe try and keep that inside because some of them have huge trucks.
Des centaines de camions ont bloqué la capitale canadienne samedi pour protester contre les mesures sanitaires et notamment l'obligation vaccinale imposée aux chauffeurs routiers pour franchir la frontière entre les États-Unis et le Canada. Ce mouvement de protestation est parti de l'ouest du pays la semaine dernière. Des dizaines de camionneurs organisant convoi ont traversé l'immense pays pour arriver à Ottawa et manifester leur mécontentement face à des mesures jugées excessives.
Hundreds of trucks, joined by thousands of protesters, blocked the streets of the Canadian capital, Ottawa, on Saturday to protest against the government's coronavirus vaccine policies. The demonstration originated last week on the other side of the country when a convoy of trucks set out from Vancouver. During the more than 4,000-kilometer journey to Ottawa, the convoy was joined by others as the movement picked up steam.
Together, because right now this is a time for coming together and not
not losing our jobs, not losing our families, coming together and being free together.
Truckers for Freedom, ou le convoi de la liberté, a quitté la Colombie-Britannique sur la côte Pacifique. Ce vendredi, ils sont nombreux à avoir convergé vers Ottawa, la capitale, pour protester contre le pass vaccinal.
Merci aux camionneurs qui donnent de leur temps, de leur argent pour aller à Ottawa faire savoir au gouvernement que nous refusons d'être vaccinés de force. Cela doit rester un choix personnel. Le pass vaccinal doit s'arrêter.
On vient pour rassembler le peuple, pour arrêter peut-être qu'est-ce qui pourrait être des abus. Là.
Depuis la mi-janvier, les routiers doivent être triplement vaccinés pour traverser la frontière la plus longue du monde, 9000 km entre les États-Unis et le Canada. Une mesure qualifiée de liberticide par une partie des routiers qui bénéficient désormais d'un soutien de poids, celui du patron de la société d'exploration spatiale SpaceX, le milliardaire américain Elon Musk.
Les camionneurs canadiens assurent, la liberté est confisquée petit à petit jusqu'à ce qu'il n'en reste plus rien.
Face à l'ampleur de la mobilisation, le Premier ministre Justin Trudeau, actuellement à l'isolement, a déclaré inacceptables les propos tenus par certains membres du convoi, soupçonnés d'accointance avec l'extrême droite, rappelant également que 90% des camionneurs sont déjà vaccinés. À Ottawa, les forces de l'ordre évoquent une manifestation nationale importante et évoluant rapidement. Impossible pour le moment de chiffrer le nombre de camions. Mais autour de la colline du Parlement, le nouveau point de rendez-vous des camionneurs, l'ambiance bat son plein.
certain moment, il y a un décalage entre le pouvoir et la puissance populaire. Le pouvoir, c'est ce qui est institué. Ce sont nos institutions et les journalistes participent de cela comme les experts, les pseudo-experts et les politiques. Voilà, en ce sens, il y a un décalage qui reste sur des valeurs qui ont marqué la modernité, l'individualisme, le rationalisme, le progressisme. Oui. Et que de ce point de vue, vous voyez, les astrophysiciens nous disent on voit pendant longtemps la lumière d'une étoile morte. Oui. Vous voyez, ça n'est éteint, on continue à avoir cette lumière. C'est ce qui est en train de se passer. Moi, je suis fasciné par cette faillite des élites. Joseph de Maistre disait la canaille mondaine. Moi, j'ai proposé, donc, et de ce point de vue, en disant parfois j'en suis. Donc, vous voyez, pour nuancer un peu le propos. Voilà, c'est tout. Alors, oubliez le mot endogamie, etc. Enfin, retenons qu'il y a quand même une espèce de connivence qui traduit le fait qu'il y a un décalage très fort entre la sagesse populaire qui, elle, ne se laisse plus faire.
Expliquez-nous, Nicolas. Depuis 3 jours, des routiers en colère occupent le centre d'Ottawa, la capitale du Canada. Ils protestent contre l'obligation vaccinale et c'est une impressionnante démonstration de force.
Oui, sans doute une des plus fortes mobilisations des antivax actuellement dans le monde. Tout a commencé à la mi-janvier lorsque les États-Unis et le Canada ont imposé le vaccin pour pouvoir franchir leurs frontières terrestres. Les routiers non vaccinés se sont alors mobilisés, d'abord dans l'ouest du pays, et puis ils ont décidé de se rendre vers la capitale fédérale à plus de 4000 km de là. Le convoi a roulé pendant une semaine, grossissant régulièrement jusqu'à atteindre une vingtaine de kilomètres de long, avec au fur et à mesure de plus en plus de monde au bord des routes ou sur les ponts pour applaudir ce qui a été appelé là-bas le convoi de la liberté. Samedi, finalement, les routiers sont arrivés à Ottawa. Ils ont occupé le quartier du Parlement, rejoints par des manifestants venus de tout le pays. Dimanche, ils sont restés et hier, lundi, aussi, en majorité, les routiers ont encore dormi dans leur cabine, visiblement décidés à inscrire leur mouvement dans la durée, malgré des températures de moins 30 degrés.
Ce week-end, le Premier ministre canadien Justin Trudeau a même dû être mis à l'abri.
Oui, samedi, avec sa famille, le Premier ministre a été conduit vers un endroit tenu secret parce qu'une partie des manifestants se sont montrés très violents et puis parce que Justin Trudeau est détesté par les opposants au vaccin. Il faut dire que c'est un des chefs de gouvernement les plus déterminés à imposer la vaccination à ses concitoyens. Il a envisagé de cesser de payer les indemnités aux chômeurs qui ont perdu leur emploi par refus de la vaccination. Il avait aussi traité les antivax de misogynes et de racistes. Les services de sécurité canadiens ont donc préféré l'exfiltrer ce week-end, ce qui a fait naître aussitôt la rumeur que Justin Trudeau était en fuite, voire qu'il avait quitté le pays.
Ce qui n'était pas le cas, puisque hier, le Premier ministre est réapparu.
Oui, il a tenu hier matin un point de presse pour annoncer plusieurs choses. 1, qu'il avait le Covid. Comme 2 de ses enfants, il est positif. Et 2, il a annoncé qu'il ne se laisserait pas intimider par ce mouvement des routiers qu'il qualifie de petite minorité bruyante, à qui il reproche d'insulter la vérité, mais qu'il accuse surtout de nouveau d'être raciste, violent et même, je cite, des nazis.
Pourquoi ces attaques ?
Alors parce que, de fait, une partie des routiers et des Canadiens anti-vax sont racistes. Leur leader, Patrick King, parle beaucoup du grand remplacement et du génocide des Blancs. À Ottawa, un centre de distribution d'aide alimentaire pour les immigrés a été attaqué ce week-end par des camionneurs. Lors de la manifestation de samedi, la correspondante du Monde sur place, Hélène Jouan, a constaté la présence de drapeaux représentant des croix gammées, des drapeaux des confédérés américains, des emblèmes des suprémacistes blancs. Une foule qui faisait un peu penser à celle qui avait envahi le Capitole à Washington en janvier 2021 pour contester la défaite de Donald Trump. D'ailleurs, Donald Trump a envoyé un message de soutien à ces manifestants canadiens. Des manifestants qui, bien sûr, ne sont pas tous des racistes. Ils sont surtout très forts sur les réseaux sociaux, avec sur Facebook des pages qui rassemblent plusieurs centaines de milliers de fans. Et pas qu'au Canada, ce qui fait d'Ottawa actuellement la capitale mondiale de la contestation vaccinale.
Le Canada qui avait déjà connu des violentes manifestations contre la vaccination il y a très longtemps.
Alors il y a très longtemps, c'était en 1885.
Très longtemps.
C'est le Figaro qui nous le raconte ce matin. Après une épidémie de variole qui avait fait 3000 morts, les autorités de Montréal avaient imposé une vaccination obligatoire. Et une partie de la population avait refusé déjà. C'était à l'époque plutôt les pauvres et les francophones. Des manifestants violents avaient cassé les pharmacies à Montréal et avaient attaqué les sièges des journaux, les journaux qui étaient accusés de désinformer. C'était il y a 137 ans, les choses n'ont pas tellement changé.